We are anonymous. No faces, no flags, no permission slips. 2026 has already started with a shocking series of events that have placed the U.S. economy on the brink. While 2025 was undeniably a year of chaos and deterioration, the beginning of 2026 has escalated the situation to a whole new level. The Trump administration, ever bent on dismantling the global order and pursuing its reckless ambitions, has now orchestrated what could very well be the final blow to U.S. economic hegemony. In case you missed it, one of the most appalling acts was the illegal kidnapping of Venezuelan President Nicolas Maduro. This wasn't just another foreign policy blunder. This reckless act has set off a chain reaction with disastrous economic consequences, ones that will impact the U.S. for years to come. But let's not get ahead of ourselves. Let's dive into what this means, not just for U.S. foreign policy, but for the very foundation of its economic power. The fallout from the U.S.'s invasion of Venezuela is already being felt, and the financial consequences are already devastating. The administration's actions have shaken global trade relations, and the subsequent economic shifts are nothing short of catastrophic. Just recently, the U.S. Supreme Court was expected to release its ruling on the legality of Trump's controversial tariffs, and to the shock of many, the court pushed the decision down the line. The tariffs have thrown the global trade system into complete disarray, increased input prices on U.S. imports, damaged corporate earnings, inflated prices, and forced nations to rethink their alliances. This policy, which the Trump administration has pushed under the guise of the International Emergency Economic Powers Act, has done far more harm than good. It's clear that Trump's trade wars were not just about economic policy, they were about power. And now the world is fighting back. The tariffs were sold to the public under the pretext of solving the fentanyl crisis and addressing trade imbalances. But the reality is far darker. Trump's justification for broad presidential powers, intended to declare national emergencies and impose tariffs, has stretched legal boundaries to their breaking point. Lower courts have already struck down the argument, and now it's up to the Supreme Court to decide whether to give Trump even more unchecked power. The whole situation reeks of desperation. Meanwhile, foreign governments, particularly China and India, are actively seeking alternatives to the U.S. dollar for trade, particularly in oil. And if the U.S. continues on this path, it risks losing its position as the world's dominant economic force. Let's expand beyond just tariffs and look at how U.S. trade itself is evolving. The administration has claimed victory in reducing the trade deficit, but the reality is more complicated. While the U.S. Census Bureau reported a reduction in the goods and services deficit in recent months, that's not the full story. The reduction in imports isn't a win for the U.S. It's a sign that the value of the dollar is plummeting. As the value of the dollar falls, the cost of foreign goods rises, leading to inflation. This might seem like a technicality, but it's crucial. The Trump administration has long argued that the U.S. is being taken advantage of in global trade, but the solution is not just tariffs. The broader problem is systemic, and it's deeply rooted in decades of economic mismanagement. The U.S. has gradually shifted towards a financialized economy, moving away from manufacturing and focusing on financial instruments like equities, options, and derivatives. This shift was supposed to make the country rich, but it came at a heavy price: the collapse of manufacturing, a shrinking labor market, and a reliance on an ever-increasing mountain of debt. Trump's solution, imposing tariffs, was never going to work. Without a comprehensive industrial policy, tariffs are a temporary fix to a far deeper problem. Manufacturing is in decline, and job losses in this sector are rising. Even the data from the end of 2025 reflects a dismal picture of the U.S. labor market, where 70,000 manufacturing jobs were lost. But the most significant developments are happening outside the United States. The BRICS nations, Brazil, Russia, India, China, South Africa, and increasingly countries like Iran, Egypt, and Indonesia, are rapidly moving toward a new economic order. The BRICS alliance recently unveiled its digital currency, a move that could very well signal the end of the U.S. dollar's dominance in global trade. This digital currency, backed by gold and a basket of BRICS currencies, is set to compete directly with the U.S. dollar. It's no longer just about tariffs or trade agreements. It's about the very currency used to conduct global business. And for the first time in decades, the U.S. dollar is under threat. What makes this even more significant is the role that oil plays in this new system. Venezuela, with its vast oil reserves, has long been under U.S. sanctions. Despite this, the country has continued to sell oil to major buyers like China and India, using alternative currencies and avoiding the U.S. dollar. This is a direct challenge to the petrodollar system, the mechanism through which the U.S. has maintained its economic power. When Venezuela and other nations sell oil in currencies other than the U.S. dollar, it weakens the demand for dollars and undermines the very foundation of the U.S. economy. Now, let's talk about the real reason behind the U.S.'s intervention in Venezuela. It's not just about oil or even the alleged narco-terrorism that Trump likes to claim. The true motivation is much simpler. The U.S. needs petrodollars. It needs to maintain demand for the dollar because the entire U.S. economy is built on it. Without the global demand for dollars, the U.S. faces a major financial crisis. The world is beginning to see this for what it is, and countries are looking for alternatives. The U.S. has essentially weaponized the dollar by sanctioning countries and forcing them to find other ways to transact. And now those very countries are doing just that. The Trump administration has effectively forced countries like China and India to find alternative methods of conducting trade. This is the true cost of Trump's foreign policy. As the world moves away from the dollar, the U.S. faces the very real possibility of economic collapse. The loss of the dollar's status as the world's reserve currency would result in a steep decline in U.S. wealth, and it's all due to the reckless actions of this administration. It didn't have to be this way. The decline of the dollar as the global reserve currency was always going to happen eventually, but it wasn't supposed to happen this quickly. The Trump administration has hastened the process by pushing punitive tariffs, creating chaos in global trade, and undermining the trust that other nations have in the U.S. It has been a self-inflicted wound, and now the consequences are impossible to ignore. The economy is shrinking, manufacturing is declining, the labor market is in disarray, and the U.S. is losing its grip on global trade. As other nations find ways to trade with each other without using the U.S. dollar, the consequences for the American people will be severe. The global economy is changing, and the U.S. is being left behind. We are anonymous. We will not be silenced. We have warned you. The collapse of the U.S. economy is no longer a question of if, but when, and it's all because of the reckless actions of the Trump administration. Stay vigilant, stay informed, and remember, no faces, no flags, no permission slips.